Today, we're joined by my sister Christina, while she shares some of her stories of the Turner Valley house, along with some of her very terrifying paranormal experiences that she encountered while renting a basement suite in Calgary, Alberta. I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for watching and enjoy the video. Oh, what kind of bird is that?
Throughout my life, I've had several paranormal experiences. The first one that I can remember was when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and I was in my brother's room with my brothers and my mom, and we were just hanging out in there. They had this big deep freeze in their room, and I remember sitting on that deep freezer, and I had caught something out of the corner of my eye, and I looked over into the hallway, and I just seen this man walk past. It was more of like a shadow of a man in a hat. And I remember asking my mom, who was that man? Like, who's here? And she's like, oh, it's probably just a ghost. And I remember thinking, like, what do you mean just a ghost? Like, that was the first time I had ever even been brought aware of the fact that ghosts were real. I always thought it was just from TV shows like Casper the Friendly Ghost or something like that. So that was the first real experience where I was awakened to that possibility. Another thing that had happened in that same house was when we had been watching TV out in the living room, and I think my mom had already told this story, but from my perspective, I'll tell it again. We had been watching a TV show out in the living room, and I must have fallen asleep, and my mom and everybody had gone to bed, and I remember waking up. It was pitch black out, middle of the night, the TV was off, it was really quiet, and I remember laying on the couch, and from where I was, there was the couch, and then behind the couch was a doorway, and then I was facing this way, and there was like a TV on that wall, and the TV was off, and I was laying there, and I was calling for my mom because I'm a kid, and I just wanted her to come take me to bed. So I remember looking in the reflection of the TV as I'm yelling for her, mom, mom, watching for her to show up in the doorway, and then I looked, and I just seen this lady in, it looked like one of her nightgowns, like my mom used to wear, and she was standing there with her hand on her hip, just looking really unimpressed with like, why are you calling me in the middle of the night? Like, you woke me up. So I remember kind of turning around to look at the doorway like, oh, sorry. And it was just a translucent figure. And I remember being so scared. I pulled the blanket up over my head and just screamed and screamed and screamed until my mom came and like took the blanket off my head and was like, what happened? And, so that was another one that really stuck out to me that was really scary. So I think the most scary experience that happened to me was in 2010, and it was in a community in Calgary called Queensland. My boyfriend and I and my 1-year-old daughter had moved into this basement suite, and it was a pretty sketchy basement suite. Like, to get into it, there's these cinder block stairs that you have to go down, and they're all uneven and worn in different heights, and it was surrounded by the cinder blocks as well. It just looked kind of like a scary movie entrance to a basement. And then when you go in the first door, there's just wires hanging and exposed pipe. It was like all unfinished. And then there was another door that you had to go in to get into the basement suite, which wasn't much better, but at least it was finished. And so we had taken that place and started living there. And then the first night, I believe it was the first night we were staying there, I was unpacking some boxes. We had boxes all over the living room, and some of them were open, and I was sitting there and going through a few things, and then I just noticed the flaps on this one box that was open just start going like this. And my initial thought was like to look up, thinking, okay, there must be a vent up there. Something's making this move. There was nothing. There was no vents on the ceiling. So then I thought maybe there's a window open. So I'm looking around and thinking, okay, like, that was weird. I kind of clocked that as being weird, and maybe it's just a draft. Who knows? I didn't think too much into it, but I had a little bit of an off feeling about it. And then other things started happening. Like, there was this gas fireplace in the corner, and to turn it on and off, there was like a thermostat. You had to like switch it to either side to turn it on or off. And that would just turn on randomly in the night. Like, we'd wake up, it'd be boiling hot in there. We'd kind of be like, did you turn that on? Like, no, did you? And neither of us did. And I was like, hey, that's just really weird. Again, something that could have been explained, so I didn't put too much thought into that. Then things started getting a little bit creepier. We had moved there from somewhere else, and my daughter had toys from before. And I remember sitting in my room and I would just hear this toy go off. It was this farmhouse toy, and it had these 2 white gates, and you'd have to like open them and it would do a mooing sound. So we'd had this toy for a while and it just started mooing. So I'm like, well, that's weird. Maybe it's running out of batteries. Like, so I went and looked at it. The gates on the toy were closed. Nobody was in there. And I thought it's probably nothing. But again, just one of those things that I kind of like saved in the back of my mind for later, thinking, well, there's a few weird things going on. And then later on in her room, there was a toy piano, and that started going off. It would start playing on its own, which again, you have to push the buttons to play. So I had brought this up to my boyfriend also at the time and said, like, yeah, her toys are going off. It's really freaky. I remember her not liking to be in that room. So he was also into paranormal. So he went in there and said, okay, if there's a ghost here, let's play. And I remember this so clearly because it was just so creepy. And so he said, if there's a ghost, let's play. And so he started playing on one side of the piano and the keys would light up when it played. So he was playing on one side and then the other side started going. Like you wouldn't see them push down, but they would light up and make the noise. So that was really, really scary. And then I had a digital camera at the time and he's like, okay, let's get a picture, like take a picture of me. Maybe we'll catch something. And I took a picture, and in this picture, there was this huge glowing orb. And it was right next to his head, like on the side that the other side of the piano that was playing. So that was when I was really like, okay, yeah, something's really weird here. But the most terrifying experience in that basement suite happened. It was New Year's Eve. And my boyfriend at the time and I had had some drinks. We had celebrated New Year's Eve. And we had fallen asleep on the couch because we'd been out in the living room, celebrating, and he fell asleep with his head at one end and my head was at the other end. And I woke up in the middle of the night, like it was 2-3 o'clock in the morning, to somebody's hands around my throat. And I remember waking up being strangled, and I just shot up, and I obviously thought it was my boyfriend because there was nobody else there. So I remember getting mad at him and just starting to kind of hit him and being like, what is your problem? Like, why would you do that? But then as I kind of came out of my sleepy state, I realized he was just being woken up by me. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, so then I'm like, oh my gosh, like that must have just been a really, really realistic dream. It felt like somebody was strangling me. And that stuck out because I don't usually have dreams that are that intense, and actually felt like I couldn't breathe and I could feel fingers around my neck. So I was really scared of the house at that point. I wouldn't go home until he was there. I would park outside in the alley and just wait till he got home. I refused to be in that house by myself because I felt like there was always somebody watching me, or I was just so uneasy. So then the next part of this story comes when I'm talking to my good friend from high school. I hadn't seen him in a while, and I had told him, hey, I moved into your neighborhood. I'm actually like just down the street from you by the Moore store. If you live in Queensland, you know the Moore store. And I'm like, yeah, I just moved into this basement suite. I told him the name of the street I'm on, and he's like, wait, to get into your basement suite, do you have to go down these like cement looking cinder block steps? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, and then when you walk in, is it like all exposed wires and unfinished before you actually get in? I was like, yeah. He's like, and you walk through that door and the kitchen's right in front of you. He's like, then you have your living room on the right and there's a fireplace in the corner. And I was like, yeah, like, did you know the people that lived here before or something? Like, obviously you know this place. He's like, my friend was murdered there. I'm like, what? Like, are you kidding me? So like I had just like full body chills because I was like, well, what happened? He's like, well, it was some drug dealer thing that he got killed by some competition, I guess, and they had strangled him. And he said that they had wrapped something around his neck to try to make it look like he hung himself, but that word on the street was this was a murder, but it was never actually processed as a murder, or like they just labeled it as a suicide. But I guess word on the street was it wasn't. This was some revenge thing from that world. So I said, well, where did this happen? He said, on his couch. I said, where did he have his couch placed? So he's like, well, when you walk in and like to the right of the kitchen, he had it like facing the wall with the back to the bedroom on this. So I knew exactly what he was talking about, which is exactly where I had my couch placed, where I woke up being strangled. And so immediately I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, that was so terrifying to have some sort of validation also that, no, you probably did get strangled by something. Like, so needless to say, we moved out of that basement suite not long after because it was just an awful feeling and it was absolutely terrifying. So that's definitely my most memorable ghost experience.
If you'd like to support this channel, there's a link in the description. By supporting our channel, you will be supporting the quest to find the local stories. We look forward to finding answers and continuing to grow with this amazing community. We'd also like to say thank you so much for everybody who subscribed, liked, and commented on this channel. Everyone who's interacted with the channel, thank you so much. We are so grateful.